How's it going, everyone? Today we got a story time of a librarian who throws books at the spoiled kid because the spoiled kid is being such an absolute jerk and taunting her. So, the librarian definitely shouldn't have thrown any books at the spoiled kid. He is a student at the school and she is a teacher. However, I'm not going to lie, part of me is kind of rooting for the librarian in this story. And as you listen to this story, you'll understand exactly why I say that. So sit back, relax, subscribe to the channel if you're new, leave a like in the video to claim your free nothing. With that all being said, let's jump into it. So we're going to call the subscriber who submitted this story Jimmy. Anyways, this all happens one day after school, so it's Jimmy and two other kids. One other kid is just the other guy, we're just going to call him Ben. It's just Jimmy's friend. And then also another kid, the spoiled kid. The reason they're all there after school is they have a class together and they were assigned a group project together. And in this group project, you had to work after school and it wasn't like an all-in-class assignment. So they didn't really want to come together in the weekend, so they decided the best idea would be for the next week that they were just going to meet in the library for an hour after school to work on the project they had together. Anyways, right, so Jimmy and Ben got along really well. I mean, they were boys in general, so they were cool. However, the spoiled kid was kind of known as being super obnoxious jerk type dude, and you will see exactly why. I don't even need to give you guys a story explaining why. You guys will just see why this kid was not liked. But yeah, anyways, right, sure enough, the spoiled kid, as they're sitting down, is just geez, could you imagine working here? Blech. And obviously, not obviously, but Jimmy, I guess he kind of agreed with the sentiment. I don't know, man, I'm not trying to work in a library. If that's what you really love to do and you love books and you love organization of books, then it's probably a great job for you, but it's definitely not a job for me. But Jimmy isn't going to go into the library and be like, ew, a library. Could you imagine working here? And yeah, because Jimmy said it real loud, and if you don't know, in libraries, you got to be really quiet. For some reason, you've never been to a library, which you definitely should if you haven't already. It's a place where there's a lot of books. It's kind of almost like before the internet where you'd go for information, and now it's if you want to get a book, I guess. Anyways, so they find a table, and they were in the section where really quiet talking was okay. For most of the library, it's you got to be quiet, man. People are trying to read, people are trying to do some studies or whatever. So they went into the kind of talking section. You can't be, it says okay, you can whisper here, but you can't be talking full voice. Obviously, the spoiled kid is just speaking full volume or whatever. But anyways, right, the spoiled kid is just not paying attention. Remember, they have an hour. This hour is super limited. And so immediately, the subscriber, Jimmy and Ben, were like, all right, let's get to it. So Jimmy and Ben start divvying up all the work. And so all three of them are sitting around the table and they're starting to do their assignment. However, right, at this point, it's I don't know, Jimmy looks up and the spoiled kid is definitely not doing his assignment. Bro is just on his phone the entire time, which Jimmy and Ben talked before, and they're all right, man, there's a good chance the spoiled kid is just going to do nothing, so we got to be prepared for that. Let's try and hope that he does something, but we got to be prepared. He might just do nothing. So yeah, sure enough, right, the spoiled kid is on his phone, not even doing anything for the assignment, but Jimmy and Ben weren't necessarily that mad because they honestly saw it coming. They're yeah, well, it is the spoiled kid. What do you expect with a kid like this? Yeah, the spoiled kid did not have the greatest reputation. One, they had a class together with him, so they knew how hard he worked, aka he didn't work hard at all. Partially because he kind of already knew that he got a spot. After graduating, he was going to be working at his dad's shop anyways, so he wasn't planning on going to college. He didn't really need to worry about how he did in school. It really didn't matter. Sure, his dad would be oh, you need to do better. Jimmy'd be okay, sure, I'm sorry, Dad, and then just not do better, right? Anyways, though, the spoiled kid wasn't just lazy in class. He was also known as kind of a jerk, and would always kind of do jerk-type activities, but he would always do those activities for attention. He'd always make that, he wouldn't be a jerk in private, he would be a jerk in public. If anything, he wanted to become famous at school for being a jerk. So yeah, sure enough, right, the spoiled kid eventually gets bored of being on his phone. The spoiled kid felt all right, it's time for me to cause he's a little bit of a chaos. And just if you guys don't know, the books on the shelf of a library are not put there randomly. just in case you guys thought that all the books in the library shelves were just randomly shoved on there and there's zero organization, I want to let you know that's not the case. A lot of the places use something called like the Dewey Decimal System. You can look it up if you're really interested. I learned about it way back in the day. I honestly couldn't explain it to you now because I learned it in second grade and haven't really thought about it since until this like subscriber video. But anyways, right, so they're organized. That's all you need to know. And the organization is like very, very specific. It's not like all the mystery books are just in one section. They do happen to be, but they're also they're specifically in a certain place. Like they have a number. It's not just like, oh, let's throw all the mystery books together. It is each book might be categorized as mystery books, but it's in a very specific spot. So if you can only imagine, if someone, wink, wink, nod, nod, was to go in there and just like randomly take books and place them all over the place, that would be a massive headache for anyone working at the library. So yeah, the spoiled kid must have come to this realization as well, because he gets up from the table and Jimmy looks up at the spoiled kid and is like, what are you doing, bro? And the spoiled kid's like, dude, I'm just having some fun. Like, let me be. And Jimmy's like, okay. Even though they were there, not like, look, Jimmy was cool with like whatever. Not he wasn't cool with it, but he was really whatever with it, with the spoiled kid being on his phone when he was supposed to do work. However, right, seeing the spoiled kid and then seeing him like be like, dude, I'm here to have fun. It's like, bro, you're not here to have fun. You're here to work on this group project that we're supposed to finish. But whatever, right? Whatever. What are you going to do about it? Spoiled kid gonna spoil kid. You already know how it is. So yeah, sure enough, right, the subscriber watches as the spoiled kid gets up out of his seat, takes a big pile of books, and moves them over to an entirely different section, taking out random books and replacing them with the big pile of books that he got from another section. He does this for probably about like 20 minutes, and that's when the librarian happens to be putting a book back, and she watches what Jimmy's doing, she watches what the spoiled kid is doing here. So yeah, normally, like, I think the librarian was watching at first just because, like, it looked a little weird, but it's totally normal to see kids, like, go to the library shelves and take a book out, even to take out, like, 4 or 5 books. So I think, like, it depends per library, but you can definitely check out more than 1 book at a time. I know back in, like, my, like, middle school's library, you could take out, like, 4 or 5 at a time, but you know, if you lost them, you'd be charged. I think I lost a book once. My mom was not happy about that. And I think we found it later, and she's like, but whatever, right? So yeah, sure enough, I think the librarian was just watching and watched the spoiled kid for long enough to notice that the spoiled kid was not just picking up books for his own amusement. He was picking up books solely with the purpose to move them to other places where they didn't belong. After like about 1 minute of watching the spoiled kid, the librarian realized the spoiled kid wasn't doing this for the pleasure of reading. He was doing this for the joy of chaos. So yeah, sure enough, the librarian goes over there and is like, what are you doing with the books? And the spoiled kid's like, oh, I'm just having fun, don't mind me. And the librarian's like, what do you mean, don't mind me? I mean, this kid is literally going around every, I don't know. Maybe the library is a lot more efficient than I think, but I feel like you'd have to go look through every single book, figure out which books were in the wrong place, and then manually place back, like, all the books. Like, I feel like that'd take a ton of time. So the librarian's like, what do you mean, don't mind me? And she's like, you're mixing up all the books. This is going to take hours for me to fix. Like, you better go sit down and, like, do your schoolwork, or, like, you're getting banned from the library. So the spoiled kid's like, whatever, lady. And so he goes and sits down. And the spoiled kid is just in a terrible mood right now because, you know, oh, man, I wish I could, like, make life difficult for people and not get in trouble for it. Right? It's like, what does this kid expect? It's like the phrase, play stupid games, like, win stupid prizes. Like, this is just an example of that. Spoiled kid was playing the let me make everyone else's life more difficult game, and he didn't expect people to be mad. Like, are you serious right now? So yeah, sure enough, the spoiled kid is just sitting there, and he's just getting angrier and angrier. And, like, I don't know, man, Jimmy and Ben kind of looked at each other like, bro's really taking it to heart that someone got mad at him for making their life much more difficult over nothing. Like, I don't know how bro was mad. Like, I could understand if the spoiled kid was sitting there, I don't know, maybe being remorseful, maybe thinking about how his actions have made, like, a poor old librarian, right, have to spend hours more work than she normally would have just because you wanted to mess with her. Maybe just sit there and like think a little bit, a little self-reflecting. But then again, we are talking about the spoiled kid, so I think that's a massive ask. Fair enough, right? I don't totally understand why I was expecting the spoiled kid to all of a sudden suddenly like obtain all this maturity, but hey man, I'm a positive thinker. Can you blame me? So the spoiled kid is just sitting there all angry, and eventually he turns to Jimmy and Ben and are like, I can't believe the librarian did that to me. She's the worst. She sucks. And Jimmy and Ben kind of look at each other like, okay, is he mad at the librarian because she politely told him to stop after he was like unnecessarily making her life extremely difficult because he was bored? Like, is that why she sucks? So Ben even says like, why? Like, why she suck, bro? And the spoiled kid's like, were you not paying attention? She was cramping my style. Which, like, by cramping your style, meaning asking you nicely to stop making her life difficult, then yeah, man, she was quote-unquote cramping your style. I think if I was the librarian, I might do a little more than cramp your style. I think I'd kick you out right there on the spot, but whatever, right? So yeah, eventually the subscriber, Jimmy, is thinking to himself, okay, man, well, we really just, okay, how can I go about this? So the subscriber, Jimmy, goes to the spoiled kid, like, hey, man, like, can you, like, that sucks, bro. Didn't actually feel like it sucked, but he's like, whatever, let's try and emphasize with this kid. That sucks, bro, but, like, maybe we should just focus in on the project. We might even finish by the end of today and not have to show up tomorrow. And that wasn't really true. But Jimmy just wanted the spoiled kid to try and do some effort, you know what I mean? So he's trying to entice him by being like, oh man, like maybe we'll be done. Maybe we'll be done by tomorrow if you just do the work now. And the spoiled kid's like, no, I need to get revenge. Don't try and stop me. And so Jimmy and Ben look at each other like, oh, brother, this guy stinks. Like, that scene from SpongeBob, man. So they're kind of just like, all right, well, we're just going to keep grinding. I guess this kid can do whatever he wants to do. It's not like, we didn't see this coming, that the kid was going to be super useless. Which, like, the spoiled kid was super useless in this situation. Dude just, like, sat there, went on his phone, and then started messing with the librarian for literally no reason. So what the spoiled kid, he just kind of sits there, and he's trying to think to himself, how can he get back at the librarian? Once again, I just find it so funny that he is, quote-unquote, getting back the librarian for politely asking him to not ruin her life. Like, bro. Real quick, if you made it this far into the video, comment book down below. Book will be the secret word of the day, and while you're in the comment section, check out the pinned comment. There's a link to the Spotify page. I upload all my stories as podcasts, as well as some new content, so make sure to go over there and kind of siphon through, especially if you use Spotify. I'm really trying to boost that account and get into the algorithm, and it would be pretty cool to chart somewhere. So help me chart on Spotify by following me there and also listening to podcasts/stories on there as well, if you happen to use it. Anyways, let's get back to the story. So yeah, the spoiled kid is sitting there and he's kind of thinking, how can I get back at the librarian? And then he eventually, it's like a light bulb metaphorically pops above his head because he has a devious plan. And man, the spoiled kid's about to be a real jerk here. So basically, the spoiled kid gets up from his seat and the subscriber looks up and probably thinks, oh man, like, boy's about to cause some trouble again. Ugh. So yeah, the last time the spoiled kid grabbed books from one section, moved them over to the other section to like jumble them all up. This time the spoiled kid is going for more of a, brute force approach, if that makes sense. The spoiled kid, what he does is he goes up to a stack of books and starts ripping them off the shelves and throwing them on the floor. Bro isn't even trying to cause a little a little bit of organized chaos. Bro's is bringing in the storm right now. So yeah, sure enough, the spoiled kid, what he does is he just keeps going from like bookshelf to bookshelf and is like throwing books off the shelves. He's not even being quiet about it. He's just taking the books and like throwing them or whatever. And eventually the librarian catches a wind of this and like walks over and is like, what are you doing? Like, this is your second strike. I'm kicking you out of the library. The spoiled kid's like, oh, what are you going to do about it? Like, you're going to kick me out? Like, yeah, sure, go ahead. Try and kick me out. The thing is, right, the librarian was kind of like a somewhat frail older woman, and the spoiled kid was like some big beefy football kid. So like it's pretty obvious that the librarian would not be able to physically throw him out, as the spoiled kid was basically taunting her, being like, oh, you can't physically throw me out. I'm going to do whatever I want. So yeah, sure enough, right, the librarian is like, I'm going to count to 3, and if you don't get out of here by then there's going to be big trouble. Dude, like, I've said this before in other videos, but I think the last time when someone says, I'm going to count to 3 as a form of getting someone to do something, I think the last time that worked was when I was 3 years old. Well, actually, for me, that never needed to happen. I was a super obedient child, like, even in, like, middle school, even bits of high school. Like, it's not necessarily that, in the very beginning, I was, like, afraid of, like, punishment or whatever, but by high school, dude, I just understood why the rules were in place, so I was like, dang, I'm just going to follow these. And, like, the few I didn't agree with, well, I just kind of did whatever I wanted there. But I disagreed with most of them. I was a good kid, bro. Anyways, right. So, yeah, I don't remember the last time that's worked on most people. So, yeah, the librarian counts 3, 2, 2.5, 2.1, 2.05, 2.025. Like, obviously, when someone's counting down from 3 and they start, like, adding numbers, basically, you know that they've lost. So the spoiled kid just keeps ripping books off the shelf, and the subscriber kind of yells over, like, dude, stop, you've made your point. And the spoiled kid's like, whose side are you on? And, I mean, obviously, I think the subscriber and everyone else in this situation is on the librarian's side, at least for now. But yeah, so sure enough, right, the spoiled kid just keeps on pulling books off the shelf, and the librarian doesn't know what to do, because the spoiled kid doesn't even, like, neatly pile them on the ground. Okay, he's ripping them off the shelves. Obviously, he's not, like, doing a neat pile or whatever. But he is, like, forcefully throwing them all over the place. So the books are getting all scattered up, and also some of their, like, binds are breaking. Sometimes pages fly out. Like, dude's doing a lot of collateral damage just because he's a jerk, right? So at this point, the librarian doesn't know what to do. She feels really like I'm powerless in the situation or whatever. So she does something that I can't really get behind. I can't endorse it on the channel. I will say it probably was satisfying to watch from the subscriber's POV, but I definitely can't endorse it publicly. The librarian basically picks up a book and chucks it at the spoiled kid. Hits him in the head, and the spoiled kid's like, who threw that? He turns around. He sees it was the librarian. He's like, you threw this at me? And the librarian's like, you better get out of here. You're banned for life, mister. And that's when the librarian throws another book at this spoiled kid, bro. So this was some pretty super unfortunate timing for the librarian, because as soon as she throws the second, or while she throws the second book at the spoiled kid, one of, like, I think the principal was literally walking through the library. Like, the principal is honestly never in the library, and the principal, like, why would they be right there? It's just honestly a crazy coincidence and just really unfortunate timing for the librarian. But yeah, the principal saw the librarian throw the book at the spoiled kid. And here's the thing, even if the spoiled kid was causing damage to the library, even if the spoiled kid was disobeying the librarian, I think the only case really where it would be okay for the librarian to do what they were doing was, like, if the spoiled kid was about, like, threatening or about to enact physical violence against the librarian, or also maybe in a case where the spoiled kid was maybe going to act some physical violence against another person and the librarian felt like that they needed to do something. But in this situation, enacting physical violence against the spoiled kid by chucking books at him probably was not justified, even though it was super satisfying. Obviously, let me know in the comment section down below what you guys feel, if you feel like this was justified or not. Like, let me know. But yeah. Anyways, right, the principal sees this, and let's just say it's not good for the librarian. So yeah, the principal comes over, and he's like, what is going on over here? And the spoiled kid's like, the librarian's attacking me. And the librarian's like, he's disobeying what I'm saying. He's ripping all the books apart. He's destroying the entire library. So basically what ends up happening is that, like, security comes over, they talk it out more, they talk to both sides. And so the spoiled kid does get permanently banned from the library, and he also is 1 day of suspension for all he did. However, this story is not a great ending for the librarian, as she is put on temporary leave, and I don't think she's ever actually asked back. I think this might be kind of a newer story, as the subscriber doesn't know, like, what's up with her. But he does know that she's no longer works at the library, which, while you do hate to see it, at the end of the day, like, if you're attacking a student, like, even though they're disobeying, even though they're destroying the library, like, you're better off just, like, telling him to stop, calling security, and then I'm sure the school has some kind of insurance or can pay for it. But as a figure of authority at a school, you can never hit a kid, bro. You're just not allowed to do that.